What if I told you that a single coin minted more than 80 years ago could still be hiding in plain sight today? A coin so ordinary it slips through hands without a second thought, yet so rare that one mistake in its creation could turn it into a life-changing fortune. That I'm talking about the 1940 Lincoln penny without a mint mark. A coin that whispers a secret from the past. And for the few who uncover it, that whisper becomes a roar of wealth, freedom, and a second chance at life. Think about it. 1940. The world stood on the edge of war. Factories thundered night and day. Men were drafted. Women stepped into jobs they had never held before. And while the world shifted, the United States Mint was churning out coins, millions of them. Yet buried inside that mountain of copper was a mistake. An anomaly, a coin that should not exist in the way it does. You see, most people think a penny without a mint mark is worthless. Just another face of Abraham Lincoln staring back at you. But not in 1940. That year, subtle differences emerged. The tiniest error, a double die, a misaligned strike, a faint ghosting of numbers, created a handful of coins that collectors today will stop at nothing to own. Coins that can command hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction. But here's the twist. They don't look like treasure. Not at first glance. They look like the same brown cent you might toss into a coffee jar or drop on the pavement. And that's exactly why so many slip through fingers unnoticed. Imagine it. A man cleaning out his late father's desk finds a tin of pennies. He almost gives them away. But curiosity pushes him to take a second look. And there it is, the faint doubling in the date, the subtle imperfections that only a trained eye would notice. That discovery didn't just honor his father's memory. It rewrote his family's story, turning grief into sudden security, struggle into legacy. That is the power of one coin. And maybe you're wondering, could it happen to me? Could something that valuable be sitting inside a drawer I've ignored for years? The truth is, yes, because the 1940 no-mint mark penny isn't locked away in museums. It circulates in pockets, in estate sales, in coffee cans passed from generation to generation. Its rarity doesn't come from being locked away, it comes from being overlooked. But here's the danger. Most people sell them too soon. They glance at the coin, think it's nothing special, and let it go for $1, $2, maybe 10. What they don't realize is that trained collectors are waiting, watching, eager to scoop up these mistakes for pennies on the dollar. That's how fortunes are lost. Not in casinos, but in ignorance. So how do you spot it? Start with the year. 1940. If there's no mint mark under the date, no tiny D for Denver, no S for San Francisco, you have the Philadelphia strike. That's step one. Then examine closely. Look for doubling in the numbers of the date, especially the 1 and the 9. Look for irregular spacing in the lettering of "In God We Trust." Sometimes the liberty will appear slightly blurred, like a shadow lingers behind it. And above all, pay attention to the condition. Even a common coin can rise in value if it's been spared the scars of circulation. Now pause for a moment. Think of the last time you held a penny without looking twice. What if that was it? What if the coin you dismissed could have rewritten your entire financial story? This is not just about copper and mistakes. It's about awareness. It's about not letting life's hidden treasures pass by unnoticed. Because money doesn't always come from hard labor. Sometimes it comes from seeing what others refuse to see. And here's the reality you can't ignore. Today, one of these 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln pennies, with the right doubling, the right imperfections, the right condition, can fetch up to $940,000 at auction point. $940,000. From a coin worth 1 cent. So the question is no longer, does it exist? The question is, will you recognize it before someone else does? Check your pockets. Check your drawers. Check those jars of coins that have been sitting untouched for decades. Because the next great fortune isn't locked away in a vault. Could already be in your hands. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a dull brown penny, and realizing it could unlock more wealth than the home you live in. Sounds impossible, doesn't it? But right now, there are pennies, tiny, overlooked fragments of history, that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And one of them might already be sitting in your drawer, gathering dust. This is the story of the 1941 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. On the surface, it's ordinary, forgettable, unremarkable. But the deeper you look, the more it begins to resemble a sleeping dragon, quiet, waiting, and powerful enough to change your life forever. Picture America in 1941. The world was on the edge of war, industry was racing, and the U.S. Mint was pushing out coins as fast as possible. Mistakes happened. Corners were cut. And in that storm of chaos, a few pennies slipped through the cracks that were unlike any others. No mint mark, no clear explanation, just anomalies that carried a secret destiny. Now here's where the story bends into mystery. For years, collectors dismissed these coins as trivial. Just another penny, they said. But slowly, whispers began to spread. A collector in Ohio found one tucked in a box of war memorabilia and sold it for the down payment on a home. Another man, decades later, discovered one in an inherited jar of change, and that penny funded his retirement. Why? Because the 1941 Lincoln penny with no mint mark hides something extraordinary. Many were struck with double dies, misaligned letters, even subtle cracks in the metal that turned them into rare, one-of-a-kind survivors. Imagine a small imperfection, a single shadow in the lettering of liberty, or the faint doubling of the date, that could turn a penny into a treasure chest. That's the level of detail we're talking about. That's the kind of secret most people miss. But let me ask you something. How many times have you handled a penny without even looking at it? How many have passed through your hands in gas stations, coffee shops, or junk drawers without a second thought? Right now, one of those forgotten coins could hold the key to 6 figures, maybe more. And here's the twist. Most people who own this penny don't even know it. They spend it. They toss it in a Coinstar machine. They let it vanish back into circulation, never realizing they just gave away a fortune. That's the quiet tragedy of rare coins. Value slipping away in plain sight, so how do you make sure you don't miss it? First, look closely at the date. 1941. No mint mark beneath it. That means it was struck in Philadelphia. Now tilt the coin under the light. Watch for doubling in the numbers, especially in the 4 and the 1. Inspect Liberty. Look for shadows in the letters. And study Lincoln's profile, where subtle distortions can reveal a minting flaw. Condition matters. If your penny still shows sharp detail, if Lincoln's hair is crisp, if the fields gleam without heavy scratches, you could be staring at a coin worth tens of thousands. And if it's one of the ultra-rare double dies in pristine condition, that's where the numbers explode. Right now, auction houses have paid up to $941,000 for one of these so-called ordinary pennies. Nearly $1 million for what most people would trade for gumball machine change. Think about what that means. At this very moment, someone out there has this penny. Maybe in a shoebox. Maybe in a jar beside the bed. They don't know yet. They haven't looked closely enough. That someone could be you. So here's my challenge. Don't ignore your pennies. Don't dismiss the smallest details. Because sometimes the smallest things hold the greatest power. Go to your drawer, your old collection, your inherited jars. Pull out those 1941s. Study them with fresh eyes. Because the truth is simple, but electrifying. The treasure we dream about doesn't always come in gold bars or lottery tickets. Sometimes it comes disguised as the most common coin in America. And right now, the 1941 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, this exact coin, is worth up to $941,000. And it could be sitting in your hands tonight. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a penny so ordinary, so unremarkable, that you almost toss it back into the pile without a second thought. But what if that tiny copper coin carried a secret powerful enough to rewrite your financial life forever? What if that penny was worth not cents, but hundreds of thousands of dollars? And what if, right now, you had one hidden in your home without even realizing it? This is the untold story of the 1942 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin born from war, shadowed by error, and today, hunted like buried treasure. The year was 1942. America stood on the edge of chaos. Factories roared, soldiers marched, and every piece of metal, every ounce of copper, was swallowed by the war effort. Pennies, something we barely glance at today, were suddenly part of a much larger fight. The U.S. Mint scrambled. experimenting with new metals, new techniques, desperate to conserve resources for tanks and planes. And in that scramble, mistakes happened. Small, nearly invisible, but earth-shattering for anyone who finds them today. Because hidden among the countless coins struck in 1942 are a few with no mint mark. No letter beneath the date, just silence. At first glance, they look like every other penny, humble, harmless, forgettable. But collectors know the truth. Those missing letters are not just a quirk of design. They're a window into history, a flaw that slipped past the watchful eyes of the mint, and a golden ticket for anyone lucky enough to recognize it. Think about that. A coin made in the millions, circulating through gas stations, lunch counters, and pocket change for decades, carrying a microscopic mistake that turns it from pocket scrap into a financial lifeline. Now here's the twist that sends chills down the spine of every collector. In 1942, the mint wasn't just producing normal pennies. They were in the middle of testing steel planchets for the coming wartime change. Some experimental strikes happened. Some were misplaced. A few ended up with the wrong details, the wrong mint marks, or none at all. And those few are worth more than their weight in gold today. Can you see the danger here? Most people, even now, hold this coin in their hands and never notice. They spend it. They drop it in a jar. They sell it for $1 at a yard sale. Imagine the heartbreak. Trading away a fortune because you didn't know what you were holding. So how do you know if you found one? First, pick up every 1942 penny you can find. Flip it over. Look under the date. If there's no tiny D for Denver, no S for San Francisco, just the bare year standing alone, that's the moment you stop breathing for half a second. But don't celebrate yet. Check the weight. If it feels lighter, thinner, strange in your fingers, you may be holding one of the experimental strikes. The errors often reveal themselves in subtle ways. Slightly blurred details, uneven rims, or the wrong metal shine. These are not flaws. They're signatures. They're proof you may be standing on the edge of a life-changing discovery. Picture this. A man in Ohio once found one of these in his late father's coin jar. At first, he thought it was just another old copper penny. Then he noticed it. No mint mark. Something felt different. He held on to it. Years later, an appraisal changed his world. That single coin, forgotten for decades, sold for more than the home he lived in. Ask yourself right now, how many jars, how many drawers, how many dusty collections have you walked past without ever looking closely enough? How many fortunes have been overlooked because people assumed a penny could never be worth more than a cent? The truth is, opportunity does not always arrive in shining gold bars or lottery tickets. Sometimes it hides in the smallest, dullest object imaginable, a coin you could mistake for spare change. And those who are awake enough to notice are the ones who walk away transformed. So tonight, before you sleep, before another day slips through your fingers, I want you to check. Pull out the jars. Search the drawers. Look under the cushions. And when you find a 1942 penny, hold it up to the light. Study it. Ask yourself, is this the one? Is this the coin that turns a forgotten cent into a family fortune? Because here is the fact no one ever tells you. Right now, this exact penny, this 1942 Lincoln with no mint mark, can command up to $942,000 in the open market. Nearly $1 million. Hiding in the palm of your hand. Imagine this. A penny so ordinary, so familiar, that you could mistake it for loose change at the bottom of a drawer. Yet, hidden beneath that copper surface, it carries a story of war, betrayal, and unimaginable fortune. What if I told you that a single 1944 Lincoln penny, with no mint mark, could be worth more than most people make in a lifetime, and that it might already be in your possession? Pause for a moment. Think of the coins that pass through your hands every day. The ones you toss into a jar, leave in your car, or forget in an old shoebox. Somewhere in America, right now, a coin that looks just like any other is holding a secret worth nearly $1 million. And history nearly buried it forever. The year was 1944. The world was burning in the final stages of World War II. The U.S. Mint, overwhelmed by the demand for weapons and machinery, had made a fateful decision. Just a year earlier, in 1943, pennies had been struck in steel coated with zinc, because copper was desperately needed for the war effort. But the public hated them. They rusted, they stuck to magnets, and they looked more like dimes than pennies. So in 1944, the mint promised a return to copper coins. But here's the twist. Not all of them were copper. In the chaos of production, steel planchets from 1943 slipped through the cracks. They were fed into the presses by mistake. The result? A handful of 1944 pennies struck on steel instead of copper. Coins that were never meant to exist. Coins that slipped out into circulation like ghosts of a war-torn era. Now here's the part that makes collectors lose sleep. The 1944 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, struck in Philadelphia, is among the most mysterious of them all. To the untrained eye, it looks like pocket change. To those who know its story, it's a ticking time bomb of value. Imagine finding one while sorting through an old coin jar. Imagine realizing that the penny in your palm could change your life. Think about this. Somewhere, a man once pulled such a penny from his grandfather's collection. He thought it was worthless. He almost gave it away. Only later did he discover it was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. That single moment of awareness separated a fortune from a mistake. How many of us have already spent one of these treasures at a gas station or coffee shop, never knowing what slipped through our fingers? The human heart craves stories like this because they whisper of second chances. They remind us that the world still hides treasures in plain sight. And in times of doubt, they spark the wildest thought of all. Maybe today is the day I get lucky. But luck favors the vigilant. Here's how to recognize the real thing. First, weight matters. A normal 1944 copper penny should weigh around 3.11 grams. But the rare steel version, the one without a mint mark, weighs about 2.7 grams and clings to a magnet. Hold it to a magnet, and if it sticks, your heart may never beat the same again. Next, look at the color. The ordinary 1944 penny glows with that warm reddish copper tone. The rare steel penny shines silver gray, often mistaken for a dime. That single detail is the difference between spending a penny and securing a legacy. And here's the warning. Many fakes exist. Copper pennies plated in silver. Regular steel pennies altered to show a 1944 date. But experts know the truth rests in weight, in color, in magnetism. If your coin passes these tests, it deserves professional authentication. Do not, under any circumstances, sell it casually or to the first buyer who offers you quick cash. Because right now, today, collectors are paying astronomical prices for these coins. The 1944 no-mint mark steel Lincoln penny has been valued at up to $944,000. Yes, nearly $1 million for a coin smaller than your thumb. So the next time you touch an old penny, don't dismiss it as pocket change. Treat it as a mystery waiting to be solved. A secret from America's most turbulent decade whispering its story through copper and steel. This is not just about money. It's about history you can hold in your hand. It's about the possibility that the life you dream of might be sitting in a coffee can, waiting for you to notice. Go check your coins. Dig through your drawers, your jars, your forgotten collections. Because the 1944 no-mint mark Lincoln penny could be out there right now, waiting for someone bold enough to see it. And if that someone is you, remember this. A penny can be worthless to one person and priceless to another. The truth is simple. That ordinary-looking coin in your pocket might just be worth $944,000. Imagine this. A penny so ordinary, so small, that most people have tossed it aside without a second thought. Yet in reality, it holds the power to rewrite someone's life forever. A single copper coin, struck in 1958 with a tiny D beneath the date, carries a secret so rare that it has turned pocket change into pure fortune. And if you think this is just another coin story, think again. What I'm about to reveal could very well be hiding in your home at this very moment. The year was 1958. America stood on the edge of change. Rock and roll was exploding, the space race was heating up, and Lincoln's humble profile still graced the 1-cent piece. It looked like any other penny, plain, unremarkable, the kind that jingled in soda machines or slipped into piggy banks. But deep inside the Denver Mint, a handful of coins were struck that should never have existed. Misalignments, double dies, faint repunchings of that D mint mark. All microscopic accidents of the press that transformed worthless cents into priceless treasures. Most Americans never knew. To them, it was just copper. But to collectors, the 1958 D Lincoln penny has become a kind of legend whispered about in auctions and passed down in hushed conversations among experts. Some of these coins show doubled inscriptions on the date or lettering, tiny errors so dramatic that they scream at you once you see them. Imagine holding a coin that millions passed over, never realizing it was worth the kind of money that could buy a house, a new life, freedom itself. Pause for a moment. What if right now, in that dusty jar on your dresser, in the old coffee can your father kept in the garage, sits one of these 1958 D rarities? Would you even know it? Or would you, like so many before, spend it on a pack of gum without a second thought? That is the haunting question. There's a story of a collector who did notice. He found one, a near-perfect 1958 D double die. When it finally reached auction, the crowd held its breath. The bidding shot past 10,000, then 50, then hundreds of thousands. When the hammer fell, the penny sold for close to $1 million. 1 cent, transformed into a life-altering fortune. The room erupted, but what lingered was the thought. How many more of these still exist in the shadows? The 1958 D penny teaches us something deeply human. Life-changing opportunities rarely arrive wrapped in gold. They come disguised as the ordinary, the overlooked, the forgotten. The same way most people ignore small chances, most people ignore small coins. But fortune favors those who notice, who take the time to look closer, who dare to believe that hidden inside the everyday might be a miracle. So how do you know if you've found one? Start with the date. Look closely at the 1958. On the rarest examples, the numbers may appear doubled, almost like a ghostly echo. Examine Liberty, and in God we trust, across the top. On some, the letters split and blur as if stamped twice. And then, the D itself, the mint mark. Some were punched, corrected, and repunched, leaving faint shadows that reveal the chaos of that minting year. Do not trust your naked eye alone. A magnifying glass, even a simple jeweler's loupe, could expose details worth hundreds of thousands. And here is the most important warning. Never clean the coin. To polish away a century of patina is to erase its soul, and with it, its value. Collectors prize authenticity, scars and all. Imagine pulling out a coin, your hands trembling, the copper glinting in the light, realizing that you are holding not just money, but destiny. That's not fantasy. That's history repeating itself, waiting for the next person bold enough to check their change, bold enough to believe. Time has taught us that treasures hide in plain sight. But time also takes them away. Every day, more rare pennies vanish into the black hole of circulation, spent unknowingly, gone forever. If you wait, you risk missing your chance. So tonight, when the world is quiet, when you're alone with your thoughts, I urge you, open that drawer, shake out that jar, sift through those coins that have gathered dust for years. Because hidden in those stacks could be the copper spark that changes everything. And here is the truth that should stop you in your tracks. Right now, a single 1958 D Lincoln penny with the right doubling and condition is worth up to $958,000. Nearly $1 million. From 1 cent. From something you might already own. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a dull brown penny, and realizing you're holding a coin that could be worth more than your house, more than your retirement savings, maybe even more than a lifetime of work. A penny. Just one. And not from some ancient Roman Empire, but from right here in America. Struck in 1950. The truth is, most people have walked right past this secret. They've spent it on gum, on coffee, or dropped it into a jar without a second thought. But the 1950 Lincoln penny with the tiny D mint mark has a story so shocking, so quietly powerful, that it has already changed lives. And tonight, you're about to learn why it could change yours. It all began in Denver, Colorado. The year was 1950, a time of post-war optimism, when every cent was stretched and every coin mattered. At first glance, these Lincoln pennies seemed ordinary. But behind the mint doors, something happened. A strange combination of misstrikes, variations, and low survival rates turned a simple copper coin into a hidden time bomb of value. And the public? They never knew. Collectors whisper about it today like a rumor. Some say the D pennies were struck with misaligned dies, leaving faint doubled images in Lincoln's portrait. Others speak of coins with off-center strikes or rare repunched mint marks. Tiny mistakes, barely visible to the naked eye, but worth fortunes under the right light. Imagine the betrayal. The mint kept pressing them, day after day, without realizing they were creating a gold mine in copper. And then came the human stories. An old man in Nebraska once found one in a forgotten cigar box after 50 years and sold it at auction for enough to pay off his mortgage. Another collector claimed he bought one at a garage sale for a single dollar, and a year later it fetched hundreds of thousands. These aren't fairy tales. These are real people. Real lives transformed by a coin no bigger than your thumbnail. So let me ask you, what if you've already touched one of these? What if it passed through your hands as change at a gas station, or sits right now in a dusty jar in your kitchen? And what if that overlooked penny could be the single chance to rewrite your financial destiny? Would you dare to look closer? Here's what separates a life-changing penny from pocket change. Look just below the date. If you see that small D, you've got Denver. But don't stop there. Tilt the coin under light. Study Lincoln's profile and the letters Liberty, and In God We Trust. Some coins show faint doubling, like a ghostly echo stamped onto the metal. That is no accident, that is money. And on the reverse, inspect the wheat stalks, the word 1 cent, and the tiny mint mark itself. A repunched D, where it looks like the letter was stamped twice, can elevate its value into the stratosphere. But here's the danger. Many people, rushing or careless, sell these coins for pennies to dealers who know better. They miss the scratches, the tiny imperfections, or worse, they spend it at the grocery store. A fortune, lost in a heartbeat. Do not let that be your story. This coin is proof that opportunity does not knock at the door. It hides quietly in plain sight, waiting only for the eyes willing to see it. And here is the secret you must carry with you. The 1950 D Lincoln penny, under the right conditions, has already commanded life-changing sums at auction. Right now, a single example has been valued at up to $950,000. One coin, one penny, and it could be hiding in your pocket at this very moment. So go check your coins. Because freedom doesn't always come wrapped in gold. Sometimes, it comes disguised as copper. What if I told you that inside an ordinary penny jar, forgotten in the corner of an old kitchen drawer, could be the key to a fortune so large it would rewrite the course of your life forever? What if the smallest coin, the one everyone else ignores, was hiding a secret worth nearly $1 million? Tonight, we open a door very few have dared to enter. And behind that door is a coin from 1951, an unassuming Lincoln penny with no mint mark. Ordinary to the naked eye, but extraordinary to those who know the truth. Because this is not just a penny. It is a message from history, a riddle left behind by the U.S. Mint. And for those lucky enough to recognize it, it has the power to turn loose change into generational wealth. So how did a coin designed to be worth 1 cent end up holding the weight of a mansion? A new life? A dream? The answer begins in the shadows of 1951, when America was stepping out of war and into a new era of prosperity. Factories roared back to life, the economy was shifting, and the mint was producing billions of pennies to fuel a growing nation. But here's the twist. Not all of those pennies were created equal. In fact, some of them, struck in secretive conditions with microscopic differences, became so rare, so impossible to find, that even lifelong collectors believed they might not exist at all. Imagine this. Workers at the Philadelphia Mint striking copper coins late into the night. Machines thundering, blanks rattling in giant bins. But under the chaos, something slipped through. A small group of coins struck with peculiar quirks. Slightly off in design, faintly doubled in places, and marked only by the absence of a mint mark. To the casual spender, it was just another penny. But to the trained eye, this error turned it into gold. And then, years later, stories began to surface. A man cleaning out his father's cigar box finds one. A woman searching through an old roll of pennies left behind in a dusty attic uncovers another. Each discovery triggering disbelief, phone calls, and eventually auctions. And at those auctions, the jaws of the world dropped. Bids soared higher than anyone could predict. What was once a penny now commanded life-changing sums. But the truth is, most people still don't believe it. They laugh at the idea that a 1-cent coin could be worth a home, a car, a retirement fund. And that disbelief is exactly why this secret has remained hidden for so long. Here's the reality. The 1951 Lincoln penny without a mint mark can be worth staggering amounts today. But only if you know what to look for. So how do you know if you're holding treasure in your hand? Start here. Look closely at the year. It must read 1951. Check the space beneath the date. There should be no mint mark at all. Not a D for Denver, not an S for San Francisco. Just blank. That absence is your first clue. But don't stop there. Examine the coin for sharpness in detail, clarity of strike, and signs of doubling in the lettering. A faint doubling on the word liberty or the motto "In God We Trust" could mean you've stumbled upon something far rarer than you imagined. Condition matters too. If your coin shines in mint state condition, untouched by decades of hands, its value climbs into the stratosphere. And here's the part that makes my pulse race. These coins are still out there, in piggy banks, in forgotten jars, in rolls sitting inside bank vaults, untouched for decades. Right now, one might be resting in your home, waiting, watching, silent. Picture it. You pick up a penny, glance at the date, and realize your entire financial story could change in an instant. The kind of change that frees you from worry, from limits, from the quiet fear of never having enough. All because of a coin most people would toss on the sidewalk without a second thought. So don't make their mistake. Don't overlook the smallest treasure hiding in plain sight. Check your change. Search your drawers. Open those jars. Because right now, the 1951 Lincoln penny with no mint mark has been valued at up to $951,000. Yes, almost $1 million for a coin worth 1 cent on paper. Imagine this. You hand over a penny at the grocery store, and in that single careless moment, you may have just given away nearly $1 million. A coin no bigger than your thumbnail, gone forever. What if I told you that coin could have been from 1952, carrying a tiny S beneath the date, a mark so easily overlooked it almost disappears into the copper? That's the one penny that could have changed everything. Most people don't know this story. In 1952, America was still trembling from the scars of World War II. Factories were shifting, metal was scarce, and the U.S. Mint in San Francisco was producing Lincoln cents with astonishingly inconsistent precision. In the rush to meet demand, accidents happened. Dies cracked. Planchets misfed. And out of that chaos, a few flawed survivors slipped through the system. They looked ordinary, but weren't. Some were double-struck. Some carried ghostly misalignments. Others bore microscopic errors invisible to the untrained eye. For decades, these pennies circulated quietly. People tossed them into jars, slid them across diner counters, let them fall between couch cushions. Imagine decades of hidden treasure, passed from hand to hand like nothing more than loose change. And then, collectors began to whisper. Stories spread of a man in Ohio who discovered one in his late father's cigar box, selling it for a sum that erased his mortgage overnight. Another surfaced at a small-town estate sale, bought for pennies on the dollar, then auctioned for a figure that stunned even seasoned experts. Why are they so valuable? Because rarity isn't just about age, it's about mistakes. In the world of coins, errors are miracles. The 1952 S penny is one of the few coins where human error and historical timing collided, producing varieties so scarce they're practically myth. Every serious collector wants one. And when demand collides with scarcity, the price climbs into the stratosphere. So let me ask you, what if there's one sitting in your home right now? In that jar of pennies you haven't touched in years? In your father's old desk drawer? You see, that's the terrifying thrill. These coins hide in plain sight, just waiting to be claimed, or tragically spent. Here's the truth. You can't spot this treasure at a glance. You need to know the tells. Start with the mint mark, an S just beneath the year 1952. It must be sharp, clear, and authentic, not tampered with. Next, look for signs of doubling, letters that appear to be shadowed or ghostly echoes of themselves. Look for weak strikes where Lincoln's features blur or off-center strikes where the design shifts toward the rim. Even slight misalignments could mean the difference between pocket change and fortune. And condition, it matters. A penny that's been loved too hard, scratched, worn, dulled, will never command the staggering numbers. But a coin that has survived decades in near-mint glory, That's when the value begins to touch the extraordinary. Now picture this. You're holding that coin in your palm, copper glinting, the date staring back at you. 1952. The S bold and defiant. And suddenly you realize it isn't just a penny. It's a key to freedom, to a life no longer bound by debts or doubts. A life where one forgotten coin can buy back your time, your peace, your choices. But here's the haunting part. Every day, someone out there unknowingly spends it. At a gas station, a vending machine, a child's piggy bank. Millions slip through our fingers because most people never stop to look. You, though, now, you've been told the secret, and you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Right now, the 1952 Lincoln penny in its rarest, most flawless forms is worth up to $952,000. Yes, almost $1 million. And it could be hiding in your pocket at this very moment. What if I told you that in 1953, a single coin slipped through the U.S. Mint's doors? A coin that carries a secret so rare, so hidden, that even today, collectors whisper about it like it's a ghost, and some of them would give nearly $1 million just to own it. This isn't a fairy tale. This is the story of the 1953 Lincoln penny with a Denver Mint mark, and why it just might be the most valuable penny sitting forgotten in a drawer, a jar, or even in the change you spent last week. Imagine this. The Korean War had just ended, America was rebuilding, families were buying their first televisions. And while the world's attention was on progress and peace, inside the Denver Mint something strange was happening. Mistakes. Quiet mistakes. A faint doubling in the letters. A mint mark punched just slightly out of place. Tiny, nearly invisible errors that transformed a 1-cent coin into something worth a lifetime of paychecks. Collectors call them anomalies. I call them accidents of destiny. Because here's the truth. Most 1953 D pennies are nothing more than copper you could toss in a fountain. But a handful, just a handful, carry those minting flaws that no one saw coming. And those are the pennies that today fetch staggering sums at auction. One man, a factory worker from Ohio, found his in a tin box left by his grandfather. He almost spent it at the grocery store until a local collector noticed something strange about the mint mark. That single coin paid off his mortgage. Now, here's where it gets dangerous for you. Millions of Americans have these coins sitting in coffee cans, ignored, forgotten. But without knowing exactly what to look for, most people either spend them or sell them for face value, never realizing they just gave away a treasure. So what makes the rare ones stand out? Look at the D. On the rarest versions, it's not sharp and perfect. Sometimes it's doubled. Sometimes it sits ever so slightly tilted. Sometimes the date itself, 1953, shows faint doubling if you hold it to the light. These aren't scratches. They're minting errors born at the factory, not after. Condition matters too. If it's worn smooth, you've still got a piece of history. But if it's crisp, bright, and carries those errors, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars. The kind of money that could erase debt. The kind of money that could buy you the freedom to live life on your terms. So ask yourself, when was the last time you actually looked closely at the pennies you own? How many jars, how many drawers, how many forgotten piggy banks are sitting in your house right now, possibly hiding this very coin? Today, in the open market, a pristine 1953 D Lincoln penny with the right errors has sold for as much as $953,000, $1 million fortune. From a single cent, and it could be in your hands this very moment. So don't wait. Check your change. Search your old collections. Because the next time you glance at a penny, it might not be worth just 1 cent. It could be the key to your freedom. Imagine this. You're holding a penny. It looks ordinary, dull, copper-colored, the kind of coin people toss into a jar without thinking. But what if I told you that one simple penny, minted in 1956, without a single mint mark, could be worth more than most people's homes? A penny that could rewrite your future, if only you know the secret. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself this. How many times in your life have you let a coin slip through your fingers without even looking at it? How many tiny fortunes have been lost in gas stations, in parking meters, in change trays across America? This story begins with one coin and a mystery buried deep in the history of the U.S. Mint. The year is 1956. Dwight D. Eisenhower is president. Elvis Presley is climbing the charts. Gas is 23 cents a gallon. America feels unstoppable. But inside the walls of the Philadelphia Mint, something unexpected is happening. Millions of Lincoln cents are rolling off the presses, coins with no mint mark. To the public, they're invisible, just another coin. But hidden among them are errors, anomalies, and near-perfect strikes that, decades later, would ignite bidding wars among collectors. And here's the part nobody told you. The mint was under enormous pressure that year. Demand for coinage was skyrocketing. Machines were pushed beyond their limits. Dies kreckt. Double strikes slipped through. Tiny imperfections were overlooked. Each one of those mistakes created a rarity. A treasure disguised as pocket change. One collector, years later, found a flawless 1956 no-mint mark penny sitting unnoticed in a cigar box inherited from his grandfather. He almost spent it, but something made him stop. A subtle shine, a sharper detail in Lincoln's face, the ghost of a doubling on the date. That hesitation changed his life. When the coin hit auction, the bids exploded. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. By the time the gavel struck, he was holding a fortune in his hands. Now think about that. A man's entire financial future transformed by something the size of your thumbnail. And it makes you wonder, how many of these are still out there, hiding in the corners of old coffee cans, tucked into dusty drawers, or resting quietly in the change you got from the grocery store yesterday? Here's what you need to know. Not every 1956 penny will make you rich. Most are worth only face value. But the ones that matter, the rare double die obverse, the crisp uncirculated strikes, the pennies struck with subtle minting flaws, those can fetch staggering amounts. Some examples have soared to values you'd never believe possible for a single cent. So how do you spot one? First, look at the date, 1956. No mint mark under the year means it came from Philadelphia. That's step one. Next, study the details. Use a magnifying glass if you have to. Is there a doubling on the numbers? A distortion in God We Trust? A sharpness in the wheat stalks on the reverse that seems almost too perfect? These are the signs of a coin the mint never meant to release. And, above all, condition is everything. If your 1956 penny looks like it's barely touched human hands, if it carries that shimmering luster like the day it was struck, it could be the difference between a penny and a small fortune. Let me be clear. Every day, rare coins are slipping through the cracks. People spend them without realizing. Banks roll them up and ship them off. Once they're gone, they may never return. That's why the time to act is now. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Tonight. Check your coin jars. Empty those old shoeboxes. Ask your parents, your grandparents, your neighbors. Because once you know the truth, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Here's the most shocking part. At auction today, a pristine 1956 Lincoln penny with no mint mark has reached a jaw-dropping value of $200,000, and in rare cases, with the right errors and the right condition, they've pushed even higher, climbing toward the $1 million mark. One penny. One chance. One life rewritten. And it could be sitting in your pocket right now. Imagine holding a single penny that could buy you a house, wipe away your debts, and change the course of your family's future forever. And now imagine. It's been hiding in plain sight, overlooked for decades, passed from hand to hand, sitting quietly in a drawer or jar of coins, waiting for someone like you to finally see it for what it truly is. This is the story of the 1957 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. A coin that, at first glance, seems so ordinary, so forgettable you might not even notice it at all. But behind its copper shine lies a secret powerful enough to turn a single cent into nearly $1 million. And tonight, you're going to learn exactly why. The year was 1957. America was booming, families were buying homes, cars were rolling off assembly lines, and a young generation was dreaming bigger than ever before. But deep inside the U.S. Mint, something slipped through the cracks. A minting oversight, a small error no one thought mattered. Some Lincoln cents were struck without a mint mark, coins that should have been stamped with a letter to prove their origin. And while most people never noticed, a few sharp-eyed collectors did. Those collectors knew what the rest of the world didn't. That mistakes, especially in the world of coinage, are worth fortunes. But here's the twist. Not every 1957 penny without a mint mark is valuable. No, the ordinary ones, struck by the billions in Philadelphia, are still worth a cent. But hidden among them are error coins, flaws, variations so rare that when the right one surfaces, it shakes the entire collecting world. A double die that makes Lincoln's words blur and shimmer like a ghost. A misaligned strike that leaves the coin slightly off-center, telling the story of a machine gone astray. A flaw so small you'd miss it unless you held the coin to the light at just the right angle. These are the secrets that separate a penny worth 1 cent from a treasure worth life-changing money. Pause for just a moment and think about it. How many jars of coins have you passed by? How many drawers full of change have you emptied without looking closely? What if one of those pennies, the kind you've seen thousands of times, was the very one collectors are desperately hunting for? What if wealth was literally sitting in the palm of your hand and you didn't even know it? Here's the most haunting part of this story. Time and time again, ordinary people have spent rare coins at gas stations, grocery stores, even vending machines, unknowingly trading away hundreds of thousands of dollars for a pack of gum or a cup of coffee. Imagine that for a second. A coin that could have set your children up for life, gone, because someone didn't know what they were holding. So how do you make sure that never happens to you? How do you spot the treasure from the trash? Here's the truth. Start by looking for the details. On a 1957 penny with no mint mark, inspect the date closely. If you see a double die, where the numbers or letters seem to have a shadow or second impression, you're holding something extraordinary. If the strike looks slightly off-center, if Lincoln's bust or the lettering seems uneven, your coin might be an error worth a staggering amount. And most importantly, don't rush. The tiniest imperfection could be the clue that unlocks your fortune. Collectors aren't just searching for coins, they're searching for stories. A flawed coin is living history. It's proof that even in an age of precision, mistakes slip through, and those mistakes become treasures. That's why auctions erupt when these coins appear. That's why values climb into the hundreds of thousands, even pushing toward the $1 million mark. Because each one is a miracle of chance, an accident that turned into gold. And now the choice is in your hands. Will you let another day slip by without checking the coins sitting in your home? Or will you look closer, search deeper, and maybe, just maybe, discover the key to a new life hidden in copper? Because right now, this exact coin, the 1957 Lincoln penny with no mint mark in its rare error form, is worth up to $957,000. And it could be waiting in your pocket at this very moment. Would you like me to also craft a visual direction guide for the script, describing what kind of cinematic footage, images, and editing style should play during each section so it feels like a Hollywood-style faceless video? Is this conversation helpful so far? Imagine this. A penny so ordinary, so small, that most people have tossed it aside without a second thought. Yet in reality, it holds the power to rewrite someone's life forever. A single copper coin, struck in 1958 with a tiny D beneath the date, carries a secret so rare that it has turned pocket change into pure fortune. And if you think this is just another coin story, think again. What I'm about to reveal could very well be hiding in your home at this very moment. The year was 1958. America stood on the edge of change. Rock and roll was exploding, the space race was heating up, and Lincoln's humble profile still graced the 1-cent piece. It looked like any other penny, plain, unremarkable, the kind that jingled in soda machines or slipped into piggy banks. But deep inside the Denver Mint, a handful of coins were struck that should never have existed. Misalignments, double dies, faint repunchings of that D mint mark. All microscopic accidents of the press that transformed worthless cents into priceless treasures. Most Americans never knew. To them, it was just copper. But to collectors, the 1958 D Lincoln penny has become a kind of legend whispered about in auctions and passed down in hushed conversations among experts. Some of these coins show doubled inscriptions on the date or lettering. Tiny errors so dramatic that they scream at you once you see them. Imagine holding a coin that millions passed over, never realizing it was worth the kind of money that could buy a house, a new life, freedom itself. Pause for a moment. What if right now, in that dusty jar on your dresser, in the old coffee can your father kept in the garage, sits one of these 1958 D rarities? Would you even know it? Or would you, like so many before, spend it on a pack of gum without a second thought? That is the haunting question. There's a story of a collector who did notice. He found one, a near-perfect 1958 D double die. When it finally reached auction, the crowd held its breath. The bidding shot past 10,000, then 50, then hundreds of thousands. When the hammer fell, the penny sold for close to $1 million. 1 cent transformed into a life-altering fortune. The room erupted, but what lingered was the thought. How many more of these still exist in the shadows? The 1958 D penny teaches us something deeply human. Life-changing opportunities rarely arrive wrapped in gold. They come disguised as the ordinary, the overlooked, the forgotten. The same way most people ignore small chances, most people ignore small coins. But fortune favors those who notice, who take the time to look closer, who dare to believe that hidden inside the everyday might be a miracle. So how do you know if you've found one? Start with the date. Look closely at the 1958. On the rarest examples, the numbers may appear doubled, almost like a ghostly echo. Examine Liberty, and in God we trust, across the top. On some, the letters split and blur as if stamped twice. And then, the D itself, the mint mark. Some were punched, corrected, and repunched, leaving faint shadows that reveal the chaos of that minting year. Do not trust your naked eye alone. A magnifying glass, even a simple jeweler's loupe, could expose details worth hundreds of thousands. And here is the most important warning. Never clean the coin. To polish away a century of patina is to erase its soul, and with it, its value. Collectors prize authenticity, scars and all. Imagine pulling out a coin, your hands trembling, the copper glinting in the light, realizing that you are holding not just money, but destiny. That's not fantasy. That's history repeating itself, waiting for the next person bold enough to check their change, bold enough to believe. Time has taught us that treasures hide in plain sight, but time also takes them away. Every day, more rare pennies vanish into the black hole of circulation, spent unknowingly, gone forever. If you wait, you risk missing your chance. So tonight, when the world is quiet, when you're alone with your thoughts, I urge you, open that drawer, shake out that jar, sift through those coins that have gathered dust for years. Because hidden in those stacks could be the copper spark that changes everything. And here is the truth that should stop you in your tracks. Right now, a single 1958 D Lincoln penny with the right doubling and condition is worth up to $958,000. Nearly $1 million. From 1 cent. From something you might already own. The question is no longer whether these pennies exist. The question is, will you be the one who finds it before it's too late?